Ladies and gentlemen, today we confront a subject that too many avoid, yet it forms the very foundation of true manhood: discipline. In a world that glorifies comfort, ease, and instant gratification, the disciplined man stands out not because he is perfect, but because he is principled. Not because he is strong by nature, but because he trains himself to be strong by choice. To be a man is not about dominance or pride. It is about self-mastery, responsibility, and the consistent pursuit of what is right over what is easy. The first keynote of this speech centers on the idea that discipline is not a punishment. It is a pathway. This single truth, when fully understood, has the power to transform the life of any man who embraces it. Too often, people associate discipline with something restrictive, something that takes the joy out of life. But discipline is not a cage. It is the very thing that sets a man free. It is the structure that builds greatness, the silent force that gives direction to raw potential. Without discipline, talent is wasted, time is squandered, and purpose is lost. But with discipline, even the most ordinary man can achieve extraordinary things. It all begins with understanding that the life you want, the peace you crave, the respect you desire, the legacy you long to leave behind, is found on the other side of discipline. Imagine a man who wakes up early not because he enjoys it, but because he has a vision that demands it. He understands that every morning offers him a chance to win before the world wakes up. He doesn't hit snooze, not because he's superhuman, but because he's trained himself to choose purpose over comfort. That is what discipline looks like. The repeated choice to do what is right, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching. And when a man begins to walk that path consistently, something powerful happens. He gains control of his time, his mind, his body, and his future. That control gives birth to confidence, not arrogance, but the steady inner knowing that he can face life and not be overrun by it. There are men who wait for motivation, who wait for the perfect mood to act. And then there are men who act regardless of their mood. The difference between the two is discipline. Motivation is fleeting, but discipline endures. It shows up when feelings don't. Discipline says, I may not feel like it, but I made a commitment. And that commitment builds character. Day by day, act by act. That kind of character makes a man dependable, trustworthy, strong. These are not qualities you're born with. They are forged through effort and repetition. They are earned in the silent, unseen battles of everyday life, waking up on time, showing up when it's hard, saying no when temptation whispers yes. The man who understands this stops looking for shortcuts. He stops blaming circumstances. He realizes that discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect. To be disciplined is to say, I care enough about my life to govern it wisely. He doesn't wait to be told what to do. He disciplines himself. And in doing so, he becomes a man others can rely on. His life becomes a testament to the truth that success is not handed out. It is built one disciplined decision at a time. So when we say discipline is a pathway, we mean that it is the narrow road that leads to everything worthwhile. Freedom, strength, confidence, purpose. These don't come from doing whatever you want. They come from doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't want to. It's in those moments that a boy becomes a man. And it's in those same moments that a man earns the right to be respected, not just for what he does, but for who he has become. Discipline is not about rules. It's about ruling yourself. When you understand that, you don't fear discipline. You pursue it. You embrace it. You become it. Because that is the way forward, not only to being a man, but to becoming the kind of man the world truly needs. The second keynote emphasizes that a disciplined man resists temptation, not because he is immune to desire, but because he respects his purpose more than his impulses. This is a critical truth in understanding the nature of true strength. Strength is not proven in the absence of desire, but in the ability to restrain it when necessary. A man who is disciplined does not act on every emotion or indulge every craving. He has learned to pause, to reflect, and to choose long-term purpose over short-term pleasure. This is not about denying that temptations exist. It's about placing a higher value on what truly matters. It is the mindset that says, I could, but I won't, because what I'm building requires a different standard from me. Temptation comes in many forms: laziness, lust, greed, anger, pride. It doesn't always come like a wave crashing down. Often it's subtle. It whispers to you in moments of tiredness, loneliness, or frustration. It promises relief, satisfaction, or escape. And the undisciplined man listens. He gives in, again and again, and slowly becomes a slave to his desires. But the disciplined man has learned that not every urge deserves a response. He recognizes that feelings are not always facts. He understands that every time he chooses impulse over integrity, he weakens his character. But every time he resists, even in private, even when no one would know otherwise, he strengthens something deep inside his will, his clarity, his mission. This kind of resistance doesn't come naturally. It's built, it's trained. Just like muscles grow from consistent effort, so does the ability to say no. The man who respects his purpose more than his impulse doesn't rely on willpower alone. He builds systems in his life that support discipline. He sets boundaries. He avoids environments that feed his weaknesses. He surrounds himself with people who hold him accountable. He doesn't try to fight alone. He prepares in advance. His lifestyle reflects the seriousness of his mission. He knows that temptation is not just about avoiding something bad, it's about protecting something sacred. His time, his family, his health, his calling, these are not things he is willing to trade for fleeting pleasure. Purpose is what gives a man clarity. It's the North Star that guides his decisions when the storm of desire rages. Without purpose, temptation seems stronger. But when a man is deeply connected to his why, when he truly understands the value of what he's building, temptation begins to lose its power. That's because he sees the cost. He sees what is at stake, and he refuses to cheapen his life by giving in to what is easy at the expense of what is essential. Some think resisting temptation makes you weak or rigid, but it's the opposite. It makes you powerful. It makes you trustworthy. It makes you stable in a world that rewards chaos. A disciplined man can be trusted with responsibility, with leadership, with influence, because he governs himself. He doesn't need constant supervision. He doesn't crumble under pressure. He is grounded by values, not swayed by moods. And that inner strength makes him a force in any environment. In the end, resisting temptation is not just about morality. It's about maturity. It's about seeing your life as too valuable to be hijacked by momentary urges. Every time you resist, you reinforce who you are becoming. You prove to yourself that you are not a prisoner of your past, your patterns, or your passions. You are a man on a mission. And that mission is too important to be sacrificed on the altar of impulse. The disciplined man doesn't resist because he's better than others. He resists because he knows his purpose and he honors it above all else. The third keynote declares that a disciplined man speaks less and does more. This is not just a statement about silence, it is a philosophy of action. In a time where words are cheap, where people are quick to speak, promise, and boast without follow-through, the disciplined man stands out by what he builds, not by what he says. He understands the power of action over talk, of doing over discussing. He does not need to constantly announce his goals or broadcast his plans. His results speak for him. He believes in living a life of consistency, where his behavior is aligned with his principles and his actions are stronger than any declaration he could make with his mouth. Speaking less does not mean being passive or silent in the face of injustice or confusion. It means choosing words carefully, not wasting energy in empty conversation, and not using speech as a substitute for responsibility. The disciplined man knows that energy is finite, and the more time spent talking about what he will do, the less energy is left to actually do it. He doesn't chase approval with noise, he earns respect with results. This kind of man values work ethic over lip service. He understands that transformation happens in the quiet, early mornings, late nights, repeated habits. He doesn't need applause to stay motivated. His focus is internal, grounded in purpose. Many people fall into the trap of using words as a disguise for procrastination. They say, I will start tomorrow, or I'm planning something big, or I could have done that. But the disciplined man rejects this mindset. He doesn't need to impress others with what he might do someday. He is committed to doing what needs to be done today, even when no one is watching. He understands that real progress is often invisible at first, and that noise is not the same as movement. He stays quiet because he is working, not because he lacks ambition, but because he is channeling that ambition into action. This trait of doing more and speaking less also applies to relationships and leadership. The disciplined man does not make promises he cannot keep. He does not overcommit to gain favor or make claims he hasn't earned. He knows that trust is built slowly over time through repeated integrity. People follow men they can count on, not those who simply talk the loudest. In a world where many speak to be heard, the disciplined man speaks only when his words carry weight. His voice matters more because he uses it wisely. Additionally, the practice of speaking less helps sharpen discipline itself. It cultivates self-control, patience, and humility. The man who listens more than he speaks is always learning. He gathers wisdom before acting. He doesn't react impulsively. He responds thoughtfully. He doesn't interrupt with opinions. He considers the full picture before offering perspective. And when he finally speaks, people pay attention because they know he is not careless with his words. The disciplined man also understands that actions create momentum. Every task completed, every routine honored, builds self-trust. And self-trust is essential for leadership, progress, and peace of mind. When you do what you say you will do, even in the smallest of things, you train your brain to believe in yourself. But when you speak without follow-through, you weaken that trust within. That's why the disciplined man measures his speech and multiplies his effort. He lets his work be the proof of his commitment. In the end, greatness is not shouted into existence. It is built brick by brick, moment by moment, day by day. The disciplined man is not concerned with looking successful. He is committed to becoming it. And that becoming happens in silence, in repetition, in persistence, until one day the world looks up and sees the result of a life not defined by what was said, but by what was done. The fourth keynote highlights that a disciplined man leads not with arrogance, but with action. True leadership is not about status, titles, or commanding attention. It is about setting an example. A man who is disciplined understands that leadership begins with personal responsibility. He does not expect others to do what he is unwilling to do himself. He does not demand respect. He earns it by consistently showing up, doing the hard things, and standing firm in his values, even when it costs him something. While arrogance seeks power and recognition, discipline seeks service and accountability. That's what makes the disciplined man a real leader. He doesn't push others forward from behind. He walks ahead and invites others to follow. Arrogance often stems from insecurity. It needs to be seen, validated, and applauded. But the disciplined man does not operate from insecurity. He is rooted in purpose, and that purpose keeps him grounded. He does not seek leadership to feed his ego, but to fulfill a responsibility. He knows that real leadership is not about control, but about influence. And influence comes through example. He does not speak from a pedestal, but from experience. People trust him not because of what he says, but because of the life he lives. His discipline speaks louder than his words, and that quiet authority draws others to follow him. This kind of man leads through action in every area of his life. In his family, he doesn't just tell his children to be strong. He shows them what strength looks like in patience, consistency, and love. In his work, he doesn't just manage. He works harder than anyone, setting the pace for those around him. In his community, he doesn't just criticize problems, he becomes part of the solution. Because he understands that leadership is not a moment. It's a daily decision to be better than yesterday and to lift others up in the process. His actions become the standard. His character becomes the compass. A disciplined leader doesn't lead with noise or drama. He's not loud or boastful. He leads with clarity, direction, and resolve. He is stable when others are panicking. He is calm when chaos erupts. He doesn't have to prove his power. His results prove it for him. And when he makes mistakes, as all leaders do, he owns them. He doesn't blame others. He corrects course and keeps moving forward. Because he knows that leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being real, being reliable, and being resilient. One of the key traits of a disciplined leader is humility. He understands that leadership is not about being above others. It's about serving them. It's about lifting others to their highest potential. Arrogant leaders want to be the smartest in the room. Disciplined leaders want to empower others to shine. That's the difference. The disciplined man listens, learns, and adapts. He seeks feedback. He respects the people he leads. And in return, they respect him not out of fear, but out of admiration. Because they see in him someone who lives what he expects. There's a reason people follow a disciplined man. It's because he is predictable in the best way. He is steady, unwavering, and committed. His life is not ruled by emotion or popularity. He leads with principle. And when storms come, he doesn't abandon ship. He tightens the sails and navigates through. That kind of leadership is rare, but it's desperately needed in homes, in workplaces, in society. The man who leads with action becomes a pillar others can lean on. At the core, a disciplined man understands that leadership is stewardship. It's not something to be taken lightly. Every decision he makes affects others, and that awareness shapes how he carries himself. He walks with quiet confidence, Not because he thinks he's better, but because he's prepared. He's trained. He's proven to himself what he can endure. And now, through discipline, he leads not just for his own success, but to help others find theirs. The fifth keynote emphasizes that a disciplined man does not chase pleasure, he builds legacy. This principle speaks to the core of maturity, purpose, and long-term thinking. In a world that constantly tempts men to live for the moment, to seek instant gratification, and to indulge every appetite, the disciplined man chooses a different path. He understands that pleasure is fleeting, but legacy is eternal. He does not live simply for what feels good right now. He lives for what will matter in the end. Every decision he makes is measured not just by how it affects today, but by how it will echo into tomorrow, for his future, for his family, and for the generations that will come after him. Chasing pleasure is easy. It requires no commitment, no foresight, and no discipline. It gives quick rewards, but it demands long-term costs. The man who chases pleasure will often find himself empty, restless, and dissatisfied. He may enjoy temporary highs, but those highs are followed by deeper lows. Whether it's addiction, broken relationships, wasted time, or lost opportunity, the pursuit of pleasure without purpose leads to destruction. The disciplined man knows this. He has seen the damage that comes from living for the next thrill, the next escape, the next indulgence. And so he resists that path. Not because he is cold or emotionless, but because he values something greater. He values legacy. Legacy is not about fame. It's not about being remembered by millions. It's about living in such a way that your life impacts others long after you're gone. A disciplined man builds legacy by how he treats his family, by the principles he instills in his children, by the example he sets for younger men, by the work he contributes to his community, and by the faithfulness he shows in both public and private life. Legacy is built in small, repeated acts of integrity. It's built in sacrifice and consistency, in self-control. The man who builds legacy doesn't ask, "What can I get away with?" He asks, "What kind of foundation am I laying?" This mindset requires patience. It requires delayed gratification. The disciplined man is willing to say no to certain comforts and pleasures today so that he can say yes to something more meaningful later. He's willing to work hard when others are relaxing. He's willing to remain faithful when others are walking away. He's willing to make tough choices that may not be popular because he sees the long game. He knows that every act of discipline today is a brick in the legacy he is building, and that legacy will outlive him. There's nothing wrong with pleasure in its right place, but when pleasure becomes the goal, the man becomes a slave. He's always chasing something: validation, satisfaction, excitement, and never truly arriving. The disciplined man has broken free from that cycle. He understands that real fulfillment comes not from consuming, but from contributing, not from escaping pain, but from enduring with purpose. And that endurance shapes him into the kind of man who inspires, who uplifts, who leaves something behind that matters. A man who builds legacy doesn't need attention. He's not trying to impress the crowd. He's focused on his assignment. He's intentional with his time, careful with his influence, and serious about his impact. His choices reflect the kind of man he wants to be remembered as. He lives each day with the awareness that others are watching. His children, his peers, the younger generation, and through his discipline, he teaches them that a meaningful life is not found in chasing what's easy, but in committing to what's right. Ultimately, the difference between chasing pleasure and building legacy comes down to purpose. The disciplined man knows why he's here, and that why gives him the strength to resist distraction and stay on course. He doesn't waste years chasing what fades. He builds a life that lasts, a life that will speak long after he's gone, a legacy that will not just be remembered but respected. The sixth keynote focuses on the idea that a disciplined man does not blame the world for his failures. He takes ownership. This is one of the most powerful marks of maturity and true masculinity. In a culture that often encourages victimhood and excuses, the disciplined man rises above that mindset. He understands that while he may not control everything that happens to him, he always controls how he responds. Blaming others, circumstances, or bad luck may offer temporary comfort, but it does not lead to growth. Ownership does. When a man takes ownership of his actions, his attitude, and his direction, he reclaims power over his life. He is no longer at the mercy of external forces. He becomes a force himself. A man who takes ownership doesn't dwell on who's at fault. He focuses on what can be done. He does not waste time pointing fingers. He points himself toward the solution. When he fails, he does not fall into shame or self-pity. He looks the failure in the eye, learns from it, and gets back up stronger. That's what separates him from others. It's not that he never makes mistakes, it's that he refuses to be defined by them. He understands that setbacks are part of the journey, but how he handles those setbacks determines whether he moves forward or stays stuck. This kind of responsibility doesn't come naturally. It must be cultivated through discipline. The man who trains himself to take ownership understands that blaming others feels good in the short term, but destroys his potential in the long run. He knows that the more he gives his power away through blame, the weaker he becomes. On the other hand, the more responsibility he assumes, the more authority he gains over his life. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't just react to life, he responds with intentionality. Taking ownership also means facing hard truths. It means admitting when you're wrong, acknowledging when you've hurt someone, and accepting the consequences of your choices. That's not weakness, that's strength. It takes courage to say, this is on me, I messed up, I'll fix it. And when a man speaks those words and backs them up with action, he earns trust. People know he won't run from difficulty. They know he won't hide behind excuses. They see in him a man who can be counted on, not because he's flawless, but because he's honest and accountable. The disciplined man also recognizes that his life is a reflection of the choices he makes every day. If he's not where he wants to be, he doesn't curse the world. He examines his habits. He asks tough questions. Am I being consistent? Am I showing up? Am I avoiding the hard work? These questions don't always feel good, but they are necessary, because only through self-examination can he correct course and grow. Ownership gives him the power to change. And change is what builds character. This principle applies to every area of life: relationships, work, health, and personal growth. In relationships, he doesn't blame his partner for every conflict. He evaluates his own behavior and takes steps to improve. In his career, he doesn't blame the system or his boss. He looks at what he can do better, how he can add more value, and where he can improve. In his health, he doesn't blame genetics or circumstances. He disciplines his habits and chooses wellness over comfort. Ultimately, the disciplined man refuses to live passively. He doesn't drift through life blaming everyone else for where he ends up. He takes the wheel. He may not have chosen his starting point, but he's responsible for where he finishes. That mindset is rare, but it's what makes him strong. Ownership gives him clarity. It gives him direction. It gives him peace, because he knows that whatever life throws at him, he will face it, handle it, and grow from it. Not because life is fair, but because he is faithful. That is the power of discipline. That is the power of ownership. In the end, being a man is not about how loud you speak, how strong you appear, or how much attention you attract. It is about how consistently you live with purpose, restraint, and integrity. Discipline is the mark of a man who refuses to be ruled by emotion, impulse, or excuse. He wakes up with intention. He controls what he can. He accepts what he must. And he takes full responsibility for the man he is becoming. This kind of man doesn't need to prove anything with words. His actions say enough. He doesn't look for shortcuts. He embraces the process. He doesn't chase comfort. He chases growth. Whether in the face of temptation, failure, or pressure, the disciplined man chooses principle over convenience, patience over pleasure, and ownership over blame. Such men are rare, but they are the ones who shape families, lead communities, and build nations. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more men of discipline. Men who speak less and deliver more. Men who stand tall, not because of ego, but because of earned strength. Men who don't run from responsibility, but rise into it. So to every man listening, don't let the world define your manhood. Don't let your past define your future. Choose the higher path. Choose to be uncommon. Choose to be disciplined. Be a man, be disciplined, and build a life worth remembering.